Welcome to Match Play, where every episode starts with a spark and ends with insight that can only come from personal experience at the highest level. Let's tee up some good conversation. I'm Thad Miller, and today's guest is Dr. Keith True, a veterinarian, entrepreneur, educator, and founder of True Vet Potential. He blends advanced clinical experience with the business leadership, teaches veterinarians how to make ownership a part of their career. From practice ownership to helping veterinarians build equity, gain autonomy, and design their exits on their own terms. Keith understands the full journey. As always on Match Play, we start with a spark. I'm going to light a match. When the flame burns, I'll ask some rapid fire questions, Dr. True. Great to have you. He didn't have his matches, so I'm going to do it. And here we go. All right. What's the most random animal you've ever treated?
Oh man, I'm not that unique. I would say a rabbit that was brought to me by my neighbor that was a wildlife right to my front door.
What was going on with the rabbit?
It got hit by a car. It did not go well, to be honest.
Not good for the rabbit. Yeah, the car wins every time. Okay. Cubs or Sox?
Cubs.
Let's go. Nice. Most overrated or most overused dog name?
Bella.
Okay. All right. And then the best pizza, deep dish or thin?
Thin all day.
Thin over Chicago style?
Yeah. No, that's for tourists. Yeah. No, you got to go Aurelio's Pizza. That's where it's at.
That's your call? Like if people are traveling through Chicago.
Yeah. You got to go to Aurelio's.
What part of town is that?
They're all over, but it started out in Homewood, south suburb of Chicago. Perfect. And, it's all around Chicago. So
love it.
It's the best.
I sold a business in Homewood. I know where Homewood is. All right. So front nine, we're going to talk about the path to ownership. So today's guest, as I said, is Dr. Keith True, founder of True Vet Potential, owner of True Vet in Sugar Grove in Chicago, and respected leader in veterinary mentorship and business development. Keith, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast, first of all. I am a veterinarian. I've been out of school for about 11 years. Got the opportunity to get into partnership really early in my career. So partnered into my first hospital about a year out of school, and then subsequently partnered into 2 additional ones within our group. I, kind of where I got my passion and interest into growing and building practices was a year and a half out of school. I took over a struggling practice and that we had acquired within our group. And lo and behold, 6 years later, we were doing about $5.5 million in top line revenue, and moved it into a brand new facility. So I quickly learned that in order to continue to scale and even grow a single location, you really need to become a leader of leaders and learn how to empower those within your own organization. Otherwise, that business revolves completely around you as that primary physician and practitioner. And, that kind of allowed me to empower new graduates to come in and gain that leadership. And, now I'm working to do that on a larger scale. And, now that I exited out of those practices that I was partnered at before, it's time to do the next venture. And, it starts with this new startup practice that I opened up, but that's really just proof of concept. I see a lot of opportunity in, the exit strategy of, retiring veterinarians, but also bringing in young veterinarians into those opportunities and helping them along the way too. So, a little mix of startup, a little mix of acquisition, and, a lot of leadership development and empowerment along the way in regards to practice ownership.
That's incredible. So what inspired you to pursue veterinary medicine?
So I think it always started off as, so many of us as a 5-year-old or whatever age you want to plug in there, loving animals and wanting to go down
person
that
holding
route.
That bunny at your front door, one of your veterinarians one day.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I had my mentor and family member was a veterinarian, so I got to see firsthand what that really was like. And, but, more important, not more importantly, but in addition, I think when we decide what we're going to do long term, for a career, it has to be more than just, love of, one particular thing.
Sure.
And I saw in veterinary medicine, and this was probably not, I call it my adult decision to decide to be a veterinarian, was how veterinary medicine allowed for not only practicing medicine, but entrepreneurship in general. And, we are lucky as veterinarians to not necessarily have regulations, around, where our payments are coming from and,
Sure.
what businesses we're allowed to own and, et cetera, where you can really meld two things in entrepreneurship and medicine into one. And that's why I ended up going down the route of veterinary medicine, as my adult decision, post high school and post college graduation.
Yeah. And don't you feel like, I talked about this on an earlier pod, like that left brain and right brain, not everybody has that, the right brain of, and just being able to do the business and the clinical, like to be able to be right there taking care of like I said, an animal that got run over by a dog, but then turning around and running the business, making sure everybody gets paid, doing your marketing, so forth. I mean, that's a big challenge.
Yeah. And I think, the reality of it right now is I don't think we're doing a great job of empowering those veterinarians to think like that. And, obviously we need to have practitioners who are very passionate about clinical medicine, but in order to steer veterinary medicine for the long haul and what that is going to look like, in the future, we really need to be developing more leaders and more business owners along the way. So, even as, that's part of what I'm trying to do is just show young veterinarians a different way. And, practice ownership might not be 5, 10, 15 years down the road, but, I did it, got into a partnership a year out of school and have since grown it. So, we just want to try and get people to think differently, really harness what their passions are and then be able to dictate what the rest of their career and what the rest of their life is going to look like by being their own boss.
That's great. And, this is an entrepreneurial podcast. Like, there are people out there that own their own business, whatever it may be, or considering owning their own business. They're looking to buy. And like, what are some of the main things that I think you felt like you had, the challenges you had to overcome to get to that?
I think it's overcoming yourself, honestly. One, it's self-doubt and not knowing, not feeling like you don't know what you're doing. I think every entrepreneur along the way will self-admittedly say that when you first start, you don't know what you're doing, but it's who's going to be the one who takes the leap, who figures it out along the way. And, even when you think you're an expert, you're going to get thrown curveballs your own way. So, I think that's what the limiting factor is just, what's going on in our own brains. But it's getting to that edge, that ledge of entrepreneurship. And, somebody's just got to push you or you got to jump at some point and you figure out along the way. And, yes, there are sleepless nights. Yes, there is a lot of a struggle and stress that comes along with it. But at the end of the day, you're building something for yourself, which is going to be better for your own mental health long run, but also, ideally better for your pocketbook and your bank account long term as well. So,
yeah. And you don't have to have it all figured out when you start. And there are people that can help you. You don't have to totally understand how QuickBooks works. You just need to either have somebody help you with it or, get integrated into it. And that's what you're doing, Keith. Talk a little bit about, your mission for veterinarians. You're really helping them with that business component, alongside their clinical care. Give a little background. I think that's and I think anybody can apply this to any business, like finding a mentor or finding an investor to work with that brings value, that brings something to the table. We talked about this on a pod we're going to talk about that'll get launched here soon. It's like if they're invested in you, they got to bring value. They can't just bring money. Is that fair?
I think that's fair. Yeah. And I think we're kind of trying to bridge that gap, long term. I think, as well as I do, especially in veterinary medicine or just in general, anybody who knows about small business in general, there's a lot of owners who need to retire that there's not going to be a obvious successor or somebody to take over that business. And we can see a lot of that in veterinary medicine. Yes, the industry as a whole has gone through a large amount of consolidation and, our bigger, 3+ doctor practices, a lot of them did get purchased by corporations, but there are still a lot of, 1 and 2 doctor practices and even some other ones that either are not direct targets for consolidation by the ones that are out there right now, or, or don't want to be a part of a corporate group. And, the reality of the situation is those owners of those businesses need to have some type of exit strategy. And I see, especially from my background in taking over a struggling practice and doing a turnaround and being able to grow it, I see that opportunity to acquire and then grow these practices is just a win-win situation for so many people. One, the owner does have an exit. 2, a veterinarian walks into ideally a cash flowing business, and 3, we prevent the closure of a practice as in the community due to retirement. So it's my goal is to kind of bridge that gap along the way, and yes, help those exiting veterinarians, but come in as a partner to purchase, buy into those hospitals, and then bring in a partner along the way to help guide them, much like I had. I had a mentor help me along the way, and to do that. And 2 years out of school, would I have been in a financial position in which to do that, or even in a medical advancements type of mindset to do that? And the answer is probably no. But it worked for me, and I think being able to do it at a larger scale helps more people along the way. And we are talking about obviously entrepreneurship in business. Like, this is, to me, like something that I'm passionate about, and I do see the ability to grow and scale and create a good business for me and my family as well, and those that I bring along with.
Yeah, you've had a tremendous amount of experience. You were an associate for a short period of time, then you were a partner for a relatively short period of time, then you were a seller, and now you're a buyer. You've hit the whole scenario, and a partner. You're with your partner scenario. What do you feel are the signs that a veterinarian is no longer thriving in working for someone else? Like, when you're talking to young vets, like, at what should be like, okay, that's a sign I need to do something different?
Well, I think, there's no secret that burnout is, it's rampant in many industries, but in veterinary medicine in general, it is, it's such a hot topic of conversation right now. But even in veterinary medicine, for those that are ingrained with it, know that word all too much. And there's a study by the AVMA that was done that actually showed that practice ownership, or those that own practices, have a lower rate of burnout than those that are working as associates.
Really?
So, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's because we're not just focused on, when you're an associate, like, you're focused on, the rooms, you're working for somebody else, you're focused on the animals, which is all and great. But at some point, there are going to be individuals who feel like they've hit a ceiling in that hospital. And, I think that we can create further engagement within this profession and longer term positive outlook on the profession by adding in another layer of responsibility. And, when you are responsible for writing somebody's paycheck, for helping people grow within the hospital that they're a part of, by keeping clientele happy, even if it wasn't a direct, conversation with you as the owner, like, there's a lot of moving parts within that business that I just think creates greater engagement. And now I will talk about it again, but we go into business ownership, yes, to help direct our own destiny, but we also want to do it to increase our earnings and all of that too. And as much as we don't want to say like it's about money, but money does solve a lot of our problems and is a tool as well that helps us create and buy back our time. And I think when we start to talk about burnout, we need to start thinking about, what other levers can I pull and what can I take control of for my career moving forward. And to me, that the lever I'm pulling is practice ownership or partnership.
I think that's excellent. And I think you're right. It is intimidating to own your own business, to be on the line, to go get a loan, to do this. But, with investment comes control. If you're not invested, you don't have any control. And if something happens and the person you're working for decides to make a change or shut it down or sell it to someone else, you have no control over that. So, if you're giving great care, you feel like your clinical skills are there, there are people that can help you, and I know you're doing that on a scale, but there are people that can easily help you with the things that maybe you're not good at or need to learn about. So that's great. So switching to the seller, since you were a seller, and you're buying practices now and partnering, when should an owner start thinking about selling, and what early steps should they think about?
Yeah, I mean, I'll first start off, by prefacing that, I was a partner, so like deciding to sell was not necessarily, I was a minority partner. I was not a majority partner, and so deciding to sell was not necessarily in my direct control. But I was 32 at the time. This was in 2020. So it actually. I always knew that I wanted to go off and build my own entity, whatever that looked like at the time. So it did provide that option for, me to kind of break my current job and be able to go and do that. So it did provide that clear stopping point. But, as far as like when sellers are thinking to sell, I mean, especially in, one doctor, two doctor practices where, we know that corporations are not coming to knock on those doors to acquire. They really need to start to be thinking about that exit 3 to 5 years ahead of time.
Yeah, that's great.
Minimum, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, setting those foundations is critical. And I think, when I hired, I've really only hired new graduate veterinarians. And even as a partner, I talk to them about, hey, like I'm not looking to hire just an associate veterinarian. Like I'm looking to hire future partners. Like that is the mindset that I want people to come into this job with, that, should we align on certain things and should you want to grow, the opportunity and the option for partnership is there. Because, that setting that mindset, even, in my 20s and in early 30s when I was having those conversations, just the way my mind works, I knew that being in one single hospital for the next 30, 40 years was not going to be something that kept me engaged.
Sure.
That's just not how I work. Fortunately or unfortunately, I came to that realization pretty quick that, the way my brain works, like single practice ownership was not in it for me. But if you don't set the foundations for that and start to grow those leaders from within, that becomes your reality.
Sure.
So, for retiring, owners that do want to retire in those next 3 to 5 years, like setting that foundation and talking about that with veterinarians that you bring in or interview or whatever that might be, you got to do that early and set that tone.
No doubt about it. And then, even pivoting a little bit to not just the young veterinarians that are working, but maybe their staff too. We talk a lot about culture a lot on this podcast. Like, how do you, you're veterinarian hospitals, if you've ever shadowed in one or been in one, you can't imagine just the moving parts that are going on in there. If it's two dogs fighting in the waiting room or, a dog that's suffering to stay alive. And then in the other room, you've got a frantic, pet owner. I mean, you're juggling all the time personalities. So how do you maintain a healthy culture inside a veterinary hospital?
One is you're constantly paying attention to it. You need to have a core, an obvious mission, vision, and core values that everybody in that facility knows. And you have to have it posted. I start every single staff meeting off with what it is to refresh everybody's memory and make sure that people know that with every decision that is made within the hospital, we need to keep our core values in mind. I think avoiding complacency in the workplace is absolutely critical to maintaining culture, because when we start to get complacent, I think that's when our culture starts to fizzle. But, for me in particular, like culture cannot be, it can be guided by the visionary leader within the hospital, but you have to learn to delegate. You have to learn to trust those people around you to create that environment that you're trying to do. If there's one person at the top kind of pointing everybody in the direction and micromanaging everything, people's ability to grow is never going to be there. And I think that's a huge detriment to the culture. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, clear mission, clear vision, clear core values, and you live those every single day, and you make every decision in that hospital based off of what that rule set is that you've had.
Yeah, that's great. I'm in a coaching program, and just this morning I was there, and they talked about core values, and they said, anybody you hire, you got to go back on those core values and just make sure that everybody understands this is our standard. We're not going to deviate from this, because if we do, then we're having trouble in very soon. So
yeah.
So obviously, like in any business, it's always a challenge to balance ownership responsibilities, clinical work, and personal life. What's your advice on that? And that's for any business, not just in veterinary medicine.
Yeah. Well, I think we hear about work-life balance in so many aspects of, really, we're talking about entrepreneurship. It's in any business. We talk about work-life balance, and, whether it's a buzzword or not, but I think work-life balance is defined differently for every single individual. When you're starting something new, there's going to be a lot of weight on that work side of things, right? I think we have to as entrepreneurs, have to be comfortable with that it's going to take a lot of grinding in order to get things going in the right direction. Obviously with time, then you cultivate leaders from within, you start to delegate, you start to trust other people. Other things can be taken off your plate, where your attention can be focused on the things that you want to do, and what the leader and the owner of that business should be focused on doing. So, that teeter-totter of work-life balance that we see, that dynamic, the reality is that is never going to be a level seesaw, right? It's going to wax and wane. But, as somebody, married with 3 kids, that's, to me, it's obviously more important to me than any business endeavor. So being able to continue to maintain those relationships is important. And, sometimes you just have to get creative with that. But I didn't start a business to not have time with my family. It's actually the opposite. I became an entrepreneur to be able to unlock more of my time, so I can spend more of my time with them on my own terms. So
that's true. And that's the thing. And, I talk to young business owners all the time, and, if they want to see their kids play softball or sports or whatever it may be, if you own the business, you could start at 6:30 and go till 2, and you'll be there to pick them up getting off the bus. And you're defining, if that's 1 day a week, 2 days a week, whatever it may be, you can do that. But if you're an employee, you have no control. And so that's what you're investing in. Like you said, you're investing in control, which comes back to you in spades. So, okay, the veterinary profession, where do you see it, say 10 years from now? Where do you see the veterinary profession?
Well, we're not going to see corporate medicine go away. That's just a fact of the matter. I think we will see some. I think we will see some continued consolidation. I'm hopeful that we will see some new independent practice owners along the way too. I think that, being in a corporate environment, some people quickly realize that it's not for them, and they want to do more. And it might take some time for them to be in that environment, but I do think that we will see a resurgence of some younger veterinarians starting or buying some practices. I really hope that we continue to see technological advancement that will improve efficiency within hospitals, because we are, right now we want to call it a veterinary shortage. I tend to be on the opposite end of that. I think we have a lack of efficiency problem, but my thought is that we can, as veterinarians, can see more pets. We can see more, help more people, help more animals by utilizing technology to make our workflows more efficient. So I really want to see that technological advancement not only continue, because that will continue, but I think it comes down to adoption. Veterinarians, we need to work towards adopting and adapting that technology into our workflows in order to actually utilize it.
That's great. And then from a seller perspective, since you're aware of both, what are some things that a seller should be aware of in the next few years? Like what are some tips you would give them if it was a colleague? They're like, hey, I'm going to sell in the next few years. What would be something you'd tell them?
I think investing in the facility, I think investing in the equipment that's in there, and really working, minimum of 3 to 5 years ahead of time to try and find that successor to bring in, I think is critical.
Yeah.
A lot of young veterinarians, including myself, are doing startup practices, which, is great. And you get to set the tone, you get to set the culture, you get brand new stuff, everything there. But, honestly, I mean, for me, I would take an acquisition any day. I mean, a startup is no joke. Like, it's hard. It's, it can be fun. It's very rewarding and everything to build that from scratch. But when you can take over a business that is producing positive cash flow already, and you can walk into that and grow off of a basis that's already there's a lot to be said about that. And, it's, talk about risk. I mean, the reality is, I think starting a practice or buying a practice, there's inherently low risk compared to a lot of other endeavors, but the ramp up period is significantly lower in those acquisitions, from a cash flow standpoint.
Absolutely. And I think what you're saying too is critical. Like, that seller needs to look at that through the eyes of a buyer, not unlike if you're selling your home and, you've got dead trees in your front yard. I mean, you're going to want to get those cut out and get new trees put in. I mean, if you need paint, if things are chipping and falling apart. I mean, the same thing goes on in the vet hospital. I mean, walk through the front door and see what it smells like in there versus, taking an extra minute to get it, cleaned out more often. I mean, it makes such a dramatic difference because a lot of times, it's a quick no, and you don't even get a chance to say, hey, this is a great, highly productive, cash, machine. But if they're like, I don't want to come in here and spend $200,000 just to get it where it needs to be, get it back to standards. So that's great advice. I appreciate you sharing that.
Absolutely.
So what's next for you and for True Vet Potential?
Yeah. So, the first startup practice, we're 3 months in and it's doing well. I've hired, 2 veterinarians, already. Well, I started with that because obviously I'm trying to do several, but, we're still, I don't want to say ever perfecting the workflow, but continuously improving the workflow to kind of get that model, that technologically advanced model and efficient workflow in place. But I'm currently looking to help owners exit in regards to, coming on and purchasing hospitals but also developing an education platform, a model where young veterinarians can come to work and have that, option to buy in and partner. And, there's some other things down the road that, I'll be, happy to talk about, or not quite there yet.
Yeah, that's fair. No, you're always moving.
We'll just say there's opportunity for more than just partnership, with this model that I'm building, as we continue to grow. So, it's early stages, but it's exciting. There's plenty of opportunity out there, and I'm just excited to be a part of it and doing maybe things a little bit differently than people out there right now.
Well, I applaud what you're doing because it's wonderful, and you're very important to this industry, and I appreciate what you're doing. All right, so before we wrap up Match Play, there's a golf connection here. Obviously, Keith, you're a golfer, I'm a golfer. What's a golf tip, swing thought, or piece of on-course wisdom you've been focusing on lately? Tell me a little bit about what you're thinking about lately when you go. I know it's cold in Chicago. Our season's coming to a close here, us Midwesterners, but talk to me.
Well, what I'm working on in my game, or I'll put it this way, what I should be working on in my game is chipping and putting. But, that's where you save your strokes. But, for me, it's always sort of the thing that is most boring to me, I like whipping out the driver and hitting as far as I can, but I know where I should be focusing.
All right. Well, between the next time we talk, you need to go get a short game lesson. All right. And just spend a little time on it. Cause that's where you're losing your strokes. That's where guys get in your pockets. So, well, hey, I want to thank you, Dr. Keith, for being on, for joining us, and thank everybody for tuning into Match Play. We'll see you next round. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.